Last night, a New York panel of 3 federal judges composed of Reagan, Obama, and Trump appointees blocked a wide range of President Trump's tariffs, including those against China. Today, White House Press Secretary Karoline Levitt condemned the ruling as judicial overreach.
3 judges of the U.S. Court of International Trade disagreed and brazenly abused their judicial power to usurp the authority of President Trump to stop him from carrying out the mandate that the American people gave him. These judges failed to acknowledge that the President of the United States has core foreign affairs powers and authority given to him by Congress to protect the United States economy and national security. Congress had created the National Emergency Act to provide the congressional framework to strike down improper IEEPA use, and any questions over whether President Trump improperly imposed these IEEPA tariffs were already adjudicated in Congress following Liberation Day.
There is a silver lining. Late this afternoon, a federal appeals court has temporarily delayed the court order that blocked these tariffs, reinstating them, at least for the time being. BlazeTV host of Conservative Review, Daniel Horowitz, is here with more. So, Daniel, when we see these judges jumping in every single day, trying to block what President Trump is doing, how long are we going to have to deal with stuff like this?
Until we make it stop. I mean, if we make it clear that any utterance of a judge, no matter the issue, no matter the standing, whatever they say is universally binding on the country, self-executing on other independent branches of government, well, he who laughs last laughs best. And if they get the final decision, then there's quite literally no point in having elections. And, you know, Jill, it's important to remember it's not just federal. People say, well, narrow majority, filibusters and that. Well, in the red states, too, if we actually elected conservatives, we don't. So we don't have this problem too often. But the few times we do pass good legislation, it gets struck down in the courts, too. So I think the time has come for a mixture of both delegitimizing the premise that this is the system of government we adopted, but also to work in must-pass bills in Congress, they got to do jurisdiction stripping. Otherwise, we're really going to be left with nothing.
Yeah, Daniel, speaking of judges, there's another story out there in Massachusetts. You have another federal judge blocking Trump from suspending Biden's migrant parole program. So, we have a Massachusetts-based judge able to dictate U.S. foreign policy. What do you think the administration should do? I mean, there's reports out there that they, in the case of the tariffs, they want them to actually, this court to take up the matter to make sure the tariffs stay in place. But what is your take on what they should do to combat this?
It's either ignore or codify in court. What I disagree with is a strategy that the Supreme Court is fundamentally going to be there for us. Yes, obviously they're putting everything into court, even things that they know they're going to lose, but that forces Roberts to use his strikes on his scorecard, in favor of Trump on nebulous things so that he could rule against him on the core fundamentals. You might win here or there, but you're going to have to do something big. I want to point out that it depends on the issue in terms of how much clout a court inherently has. Are they dealing with criminal proceedings, which a court has more power over that? Are they trying to place a negative and a positive action? Are they trying to mandate an affirmative action on a negative? So here's a great example. Another, let's take that Massachusetts case. That judge said they have to continue processing those people in the pipeline. Well, judges don't give work permits. And that's an executive function. So you're not just placing a negative, you're mandating they take affirmative policy. Trump swore an oath to the Constitution. Trump is not allowed to give out visas and legal documents to people that do not deserve them pursuant to law. So he cannot do that. Another case to the point, it was yesterday, 2 days ago, a federal judge said that HHS had to leave up on their website certain studies about transgenders and transgender care. Again, I mean, they don't control the websites. That's something the executive branch does. You just don't do it. And I'll give you an example of where this was done, even where the courts have much stronger power. The ultimate power of a court is to grant relief to someone in criminal proceedings. A Florida judge ruled that the state cannot criminalize illegal presence at a state level. The Attorney General, James Uthmeier, sent a memo to the judge and Florida Highway Patrol and said, you have no power to bind people that aren't parties to the case. It was just my office, not Florida Highway Patrol. So therefore, guess what? I'm ordering them to continue. The Tampa Bay Times reports that 25 individuals have been arrested after she issued that injunction. So he was able to take an affirmative action against the order. Certainly, Trump could start by at least just declining to affirmatively take down stuff from websites or process certain visas.
Well, when it comes to the courts trying to override Trump's policies, I don't know if you saw this or not today, but Stephen Miller had a great tweet. He put out that it's the end of democracy if it's not reversed. Do you agree with that? Is he going too far? Give me your take on what Stephen Miller put out today.
Well, as you all know, my first book, Stolen Sovereignty, I mean, it's been the end of democracy for a long time. The notion that we don't have three co-equal branches of government, but in fact, the unelected branch stands atop the food chain, that's a big problem. We have this is not what our founders fought for. And look, I say this as someone who doesn't really like some of the trade policies. But again, we can't have the court setting the tariff rates. So he's absolutely right about that. But I would also say that at some point, again, either Trump as the greatest celebrity and most powerful man could at least hold the ground that a no-name Florida attorney general could hold. Or if you're too scared to do that for whatever reason, you got to demand, for example, that they pass Chip Roy's amendment to the judiciary part of budget reconciliation that takes courts out of things like review of deportations. One of the two has to give. Otherwise, 90% of what they do is going to be sidelined, and maybe other stuff will eventually get a Supreme Court ruling in a few years.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where, as everyone realizes now, and I think some of us, yourself included, have realized for a long time, Roberts and these people who at their best, say that they're trying to save the court or care about the court are destroying its reputation in an accelerated fashion in real time. And it's very hard politically to see how this doesn't resolve soon. But let's move on to other stuff. H-1Bs. Daniel, you wrote a piece for the Blaze.com. Everyone should go and read that, about the promise of putting American workers first. And of course, we all know the H-1B program was sold as a way to import all these brilliant people that we so desperately need. And you point out that it's become something else instead.
No, exactly. No American may apply. Basically, we've cut out the lower rungs of entry-level jobs that no American could graduate in an array of fields and find a job. This was indefensible a decade ago when Trump railed against it. This is one of his core agenda items. Now, with everyone agreeing that Wall Street Journal is reporting every day that Americans nobody could find jobs in tech. There's a big problems. Some blame it on AI, other reasons. But the point is, there sure as heck is no, demand or need for more foreign workers. It was believable enough to say we won't pick lettuce. Then it was every blue collar job. Then it's every gray collar job and truck driving. And now it's, computers, anything in tech, medical jobs. Someone from Erie, Pennsylvania sent me from Gannon University a master's degree graduation, master's degree program in computers. 64 out of 65 graduates were Indians. It's not natural. It makes no sense. The Trump administration has done a great job going after the subversive element of visas, the pro-Hamas, and now they're talking about the Chinese, which is very important. The one gaping hole is re-upping the legacy of the first term where they started to go after H-1Bs. They just approved 120,000 more H-1Bs for 2026. These are futuristic things that don't even have jobs attached to them. It just makes no sense. And also, they're picked out of a random lottery. So part of what they were proposing last time, which I wish they would reimpose, is rather than a race to the bottom of seeing who could pay less, prioritizing it based on who pays the most. And then you'll see if there really is a need for it. There's a number of other reforms I mentioned, obviously the OPT program, where they allow all these foreign students to stay indefinitely and work at all the entry-level jobs. Guess what? They don't have to pay payroll taxes for those people. So there is no way an American can get a job in these programs. I would just say this is the one gaping hole in the Trump visa agenda, which has gotten progressively better the last few weeks. And I would hope that there's some focus, if not ending it, at least reforming it. Because remember, as bad as the courts are about terminating status for those already here, the fact that you could just not bring in new people, that has already been adjudicated.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, I have to say, I do want to give credit out where it's due, where, Secretary of State Marco Rubio keeps on doing great stuff, saying we're going to stop this with the Chinese coming in. We're going to look at how these universities are bringing all these foreign students. Great stuff. But that you point out is so important, because if we don't change that incentive structure, none of this changes. And that's why we like Daniel. He's always going to the structural changes we need. So on that note, I'm curious just to take your temperature on red states, red state, blue states. One of our most important issues that we used to talk about, in Blaze News Tonight before it became the mandate, was what's going on in red state America. And this is really part of the Trump agenda, and the victory would be to make these states, let's say, more red, because as we know and talk about, a lot of these red state leaders are pretty terrible. What have you seen, say, since November in red state America? Do you see some good changes? Do you see the same old stuff? What's your big picture take?
So it's actually interesting. In some smaller states where we were doing really badly, we've improved. South Dakota, Wyoming, you have Freedom Caucuses that took over the House chambers there, and they were able to pass a lot of good bills. Wyoming has a terrible governor, but he was forced to sign, or at least allow some good bills to become law. Wyoming, actually, we killed anti-campus carry. So gun-free zones is gone in Wyoming, became the first state that, thanks to the Freedom Caucus takeover there. But then bizarrely, the two most important largest states, Florida and Texas, you have the Florida House and the Texas House that essentially just gave control to the Democrats. I mean, in our flagship in Texas, you have Speaker Burrows that has blocked every good bill, focused on one school choice bill, and even then threw in $10 billion to the teachers unions to public schools, and then brought up a bunch of Democrat bills, gave them de facto co-chairmanships. And then you have in Florida, the Florida House Speaker going to war with the governor there. Heck, I'm sure you guys saw that Florida dominates all of the immigration enforcement. They have more immigration enforcement than all the states combined. They were going to block that bill that gave the governor the authorities, and he had to fight them on that campaign against them. It's bad. I mean, Matt, it's bad. A lot of these guys maybe they shed their outward skin and put on a MAGA hat, but they're the same corporatists at heart. They want the cheap labor. They want the marijuana cartel there. In Texas, frankly, I don't even know. I don't even understand how you could win the biggest mandate ever in state government and do what they did. So we have a lot more to do. And I will just say that there are a lot of candidates that are now, you have some of these Freedom Caucus guys that want to run for governor. This is very pivotal. Most red state governorships, Texas, Florida, South Dakota, Wyoming, Idaho, all these states are up in this cycle or next year. And I think this is really where it's important for Trump to not allow Chris LaCivita, Susie Wiles, who often have certain clients or donors that are hooked in with establishment candidates, and just endorse them just because they have the money, the name ID, or they're incumbents. He's got to change direction, at a minimum, stay out. Better yet, endorse the challengers, endorse the grassroots candidates, those who stood by him from day one.
There's still a long ways to go, but we're not blackpilling, Daniel Horowitz. We're not going to do it. Not quite yet. Until those wheels fall off, we still have at least a little bit of hope.